It's time to wake up and pray up here on the Finding Faith and Losing Sleep podcast, episode 13, the Sharable Parables, here with Wes Easley. I am me. And of course, I have the executive producer with me as well, Pierre, and his boss, Michelle. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing well. Definitely my boss. I can't say I can even argue with that. It's just knowing my life. But she's a good boss. She treats me well. So
it's good when you love your employees.
It's been a couple weeks since we've been together, just because simply life gets in the way sometimes, and that's just how life is a little bit. Last week is just an entire week, and I don't even 2 weeks it takes me to be able to prepare for my anniversary, which was last week, and then my daughter's birthday is 2 days after that. My wife and I celebrated our 29th wedding anniversary, guys. 29 years being married. We've been together probably longer than that. 34 years altogether, dating and marriage, and at least 2 of those years have been happy.
Your boss loves you too.
Well, yeah, and sometimes, because those 2 years have not been consecutive. It's been sporadic happiness all throughout. No, I'm just kidding. It's been a great marriage. 29 years. I couldn't be more thankful for her than what I am, just because it's simply she's had to deal with me. And then my daughter turned 16. Everybody, 16 years old. So she's going for the driving test and everything this week. It's just that boy, oh boy, life just keeps changing.
Boy, I guess that makes like the pit in my stomach turn a little bit thinking about that for her. So I can only imagine how you feel.
Congratulations.
Yes.
That's awesome with the anniversary. A lot of years there. So congrats there. And I guess condolences for having a teenager about to drive, because we've all been there before ourselves, being the actual driver.
I don't know how I survived. I've had multiple wrecks over my time, and I hope she has her mother's attention span and not mine. That's all I can hope for. But here we are. Last time we got together, guys, we talked about to believe or not to believe, if you remember that episode. And you can always go back and listen to those past episodes. And anytime you listen to them, it just takes 5 seconds to slap some stars around or leave a review, or however you like to do that. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, all those places really like it whenever the listeners get involved. And that always helps us to get to know you guys as well. If you have a topic or a conversation that you would like for us to talk about, just leave it there in the comments on whatever listening platform you like to listen to the show on. And we do encourage you to go back. We're on episode 13, so there's only 13 episodes that you have to catch up on. Feel free to do so, not for our sake, but for your sake. Hopefully it'll be encouraging to you. And I don't know that we got any responses yet, or that you've checked them, Pierre. It's only been 3 weeks since we've talked, so I don't know if you've been on top of that ball or not.
I have. We hadn't got any new responses. I did get a few texts. So I've had coworkers have reached out. One actually hadn't, heard the podcast in a while and just wanted to touch base on being able to catch up now and just how amazing it was. And I'm like, oh, you're just telling me that because you work with me. And she's like, no, it's amazing. I wouldn't tell you if I didn't think so. We had great rapport, loved our banter. So that was good. I think we even came across Facebook. There was another side conversation, didn't even include Michelle and I, but it was talking about us. And, one of the comments was, hey, did you hear their podcast? They got a really good podcast. And we were getting promotion from someone that we didn't know listened to it as well. So no comments, but good to just randomly come across folks that are listening or even talking about us with us not even knowing that we were being included.
And we appreciate that so much. And it's really good for the heart to know that you're reaching people, and sometimes at their lowest moments too, when they need something. And we just hope that God speaks through us. That's all.
Yeah, that's really all we're doing here. You guys, we've known each other for a couple of years now, and we've had this journey of faith kind of behind the scenes on some other podcasts and in life that we've been going through together. And so we decided to get together and just put it out there in front of everybody, because we've had unique situations in all of our lives. And as we come together here to talk about these matters, we're all going to have differing opinions. And I think one of the most important things that we could have today in society is learning to have differing opinions and not be enemies with each other. You know what I mean? We shouldn't have to be fighting and struggling and arguing amongst ourselves to be able to come up to a solution or an answer. And it shouldn't be so reactionary. I think that's why a lot of people get into fights, is because they get reactionary, and instead of just taking the time to breathe and try to contemplate, okay, which side of the fence do I need to be on this subject matter, and not take a really strong stance on some of these things, and actually take time to to breathe and think it through, and then come back and revisit the topic with a person again at another time.
Well, I'm just really glad you said that, Wes. I'm just,
you know what?
Words taken right out of my mouth.
Uh-oh.
We actually, this is our thing here at home. So I'm a person that I need to walk away and breathe. I got to think about things, or bad things are going to happen. I'm going to just say what's on my mind. I'm going to sometimes be honest. Sometimes I'm just going to be frustrated. You don't know what's going to come out if I have to be reactionary. So I need to walk away. And the lady, the beautiful wife to my left, does not like when I walk away. Like, if you ever see cartoons where like steam starts coming out of ears, that's her if I walk away when she wants to talk about something.
I'm definitely reactionary, and I need to talk about it, and I need to talk about it now. And if we don't talk about it now, then it turns into one thing, turns into 10 things, because now I've had time to think about it, and this and this and this. So with that said, I agree that there should be time in between. So I'm coming around to Pierre's side. What he failed to mention is the part you said, Wes, about coming back and talking about it. That's where he fails. So that's where I get upset. So we're getting better. I will say this is where we have improved as we've gone along, because I'm willing to see his side, and I am getting to the point now where prayer helps me and helps me to not be so reactionary. At least it's getting better, I hope. I'm trying. But I actually agree that you do need to separate for a little bit. But the key is that you need to come back. So, yes, thanks, Wes.
Well, and look, to our listeners, and some of you know this already by listening to those past shows, we do have a script. I say a script. We do have notes that we go over. So we do have a topic that we've all thought about and prayed about before we come together here. But then we all have our own little tangents, our own little rants. So we leave a lot of wiggle room for the Holy Spirit to be able to work here in this podcast a little bit. And that's how I like it. I like it like that, where we have something to go by, but at the same time, we can go on different rants. And that was not practice. I had no idea what door that was being opened. I was thinking about that separately, because we're getting into the political season again, right? Where presidencies are going to be coming up for grabs and stuff like that. And the last time all this happened, man, our country was more divided than I'd ever seen it in all of my years, right? I'd never seen our country be so divided throughout that time, like the year before the presidency, before that November. So about a year and a half before that. And I'm sitting here, as I get older and hopefully a little bit wiser, I'm looking at it going, okay, how do we avoid that this time? How can I help avoid that? Which I'm not a big influencer or anything like that, but what can I do? How can I do my part? Because personally, in my neck of the woods, it never really seemed to be that divisive. But man, you watch the media, you watch the news, you watch all this stuff, Twitter, all these places, and it just seems like the whole country is being ripped in half. And I think that everybody thinks they have to be right because they're being filmed or there's, so it's all reactionary stuff, and you can't be being proven wrong right there on the spot. And I think we just have to be a little bit more patient with each other. So that's why I was talking about that. And we're going to get into parables. And I think Jesus talked about some of those kind of parables as well.
Well, Wes, you were talking about that. And when we had our life group this past week, Pierre did like an icebreaker and asked if there was a reality show, what you thought should be a reality show or would be a good one. And I had heard one time, and because you brought up the presidential election, I said, well, I heard once that we should do the presidential election like The Masked Singer. So you don't know who the candidate is, and you're literally just voting for their platform. And I think that is brilliant. So, but as far as like what you said about being, separated, and I agree, Pierre and I, what was that we watched? The talk, like how
Social Dilemma.
Yes. And boy, was that eye opening. Like, it's almost like, our electronics and such are kind of forcing us that way, to kind of reinforce the beliefs that we have. It just kind of like, as you look at your social media, it just reinforces what you think, and then makes the divide even bigger. And it's scary because you can see it clearly that it's really true. And like, I'm not going to get on a soapbox there. I'll go back again to how are we supposed to be the United States if we're constantly separated? So, but
yeah, and this
it
isn't
is
a
what it is.
political thing. Yeah, it is not a political thing. I'm actually hoping that we will use more patience, not only in this, but in also other topics. Not politics, because necessarily all the time, always. But I mean, there's just so many issues that come up in life, and we talked about last time to believe or not to believe. The thing is that we all believe that God is in control. At least the three of us do believe that God is in control, and so we can have some assurance there that we don't have to be in control of those situations. We can let God steer that ship a little bit, Pierre, throughout life, and just take what happens as what is happening a little bit.
Yeah, that's what we have to do. And I know we're going to get into parables, and I think the one that really ties us into the last episode of believing and not believing would be the parable of the sower for me. And just to kind of summarize it a bit, basically a farmer's going out, he's sowing seed, and he's scattering seed in different types of places along the pathways. Some of the places are rocky, don't have much soil. Some have soil but are shallow. Some are really good soil, that you can actually plant in. And it kind of goes into, just Jesus kind of explaining the word, explaining God, and I think how it's accepted or received by some of us.
So we're the soil.
Yeah, we are. Right. And that's what we have to do when you're talking about that parable of sowing the seed in different soils. We can only do so much. Our job is to sow that seed, sow those thoughts, sow those good thoughts in people's minds. Right. We got to do those things, whether it be a religious thought or whether it just be something other than that. We have to be the ones that sow those seeds, but we're not the ones necessarily tilling that ground. We got to let God give the increase. I think that's what Paul says in 1 Corinthians as well.
For sure. You want to be that good soil. You want to be the one that's growing and, spreading and all those things versus, things just kind of bouncing off of you, not going anywhere, or, birds, thieves coming and taking that. But the part that stood out to me the most in that parable was the disciples actually asked Jesus, why do you speak in parables? And he replied, because the knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of heaven have been given to you, but not to them. Whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. This is why I speak to them in parables. And he ties in, though seeing, they do not see, though hearing, they do not hear or understand. And I feel like that ties into the believe or to believe or not to believe, because all around us, for me, there are signs of God in his existence. But there are some that are in the same life that I am, that are same world that we are living in, that can't see what's right in front of them, or they hear and it doesn't, click. They don't understand it. And that was me at one point. I could read some of these parables. I'd be like, what in the world is he talking about? Even though he kind of explains it, I'm like, what? That didn't make any sense to me. But when you start to, again, take your time, be patient, try to understand what's being taught, I think it opens up a whole new world to you.
Seek first to listen.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I think that's so true, Pierre. Like, it's how we get it, right? And it goes on to each individual person. And I think as you share the gospel or you share good news, right? That's what gospel is good news. But I think you can share good news all along the way, whatever it is. Hey, you're looking good today. Hey, good job. Or if you see somebody, I don't know, trying to run or jog or something, go get it, buddy. Don't be a smart aleck. People probably think I'm a smart aleck whenever I do it. But you can be positive about a lot of different things and just spread that positive message out there, which if you're somebody who likes to spread the good news, the gospel, then that always helps you spread the gospel a little bit more, because you're kind of tending to the soil a little bit, I think, Michelle, as you be positive out there. If you're always a gloomy Gus out there, or if you're always negative, if you're always having a bad day, it's probably not really helping people get good soil.
It's true. And I think you're not receptive to God at that point, right? Like, I know I refer to my dad growing up a lot, and that's because, looking back, he gave me a lot of really good advice that I didn't receive so well back then, but I understand it a lot better now. So I guess I draw that analogy. And I think that one of the things he said that I've probably shared before is you can't have a positive thought and a negative thought at the same time. So we get to, and what I've learned is we get to choose. It's our choice if we're choosing to see things in a positive way or if we're choosing to see them in a negative way. So if we choose to see things negatively, then we're not allowing God to speak to us. We're not seeking to listen first, or to understand. We're not creating good soil, and we're not helping others, because if we can't do it for ourselves, I think that, in my opinion, we have to do it first, because you're not in a place to help others until you've tended your own soil. So, and honestly, you can tend your own soil as you're helping others. It doesn't mean you have to be, completely, planted. Like, I think that's part of growing is you get watered when you help others. So, but you have to plant first, right? Like,
right.
That's part of it. So, I mean, I think it's super important, like, to just understand that we need one another and we need to empower and uplift each other. But we have to really make sure our seed is planted first.
All right, so I got a question then. You sparked a little thought in my head, which doesn't happen often. Not your part, my part, right? I don't get a lot of thought. How can we tend to our soil? We keep talking about this, and this comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 3, where it says, no one who plants nor anybody waters anything, but God is the one who causes the growth. He said, Apollos watered, I planted, but God gives the increase. It's essentially what it's saying there, 1 Corinthians chapter 3. So you got to have good soil. And back to what Jesus said about the parables, about having that seed sown on good ground or on rocky soil or anything like that. How can we prepare our lives to receive these words or these seeds that are planted, that are out there, Pierre, a little bit, and Michelle too? We can all kind of brainstorm here. How can we prepare our soil for that? I got four plants for my anniversary, because my wife knows I like plants. Right? Now they're not going to stay around long, because we're just not real good at plants. I don't know what it is about us. We water them, we put them in the sun, but something happens where we're not real good with plants. If you got any advice on how to for me to raise plants better, please feel free.
We're not plants either, so I can't help you there.
That's not our forte.
I think part of what has helped us, just speaking from our experience, is surrounding yourselves with other good soil. Okay. If that makes sense. And I know we talk about our life groups a lot, but that's our good soil. So in order to kind of keep some of that negative out, you have to surround yourself with other positive folks that are going to encourage you, both in your physical, personal life, but as well as in your spiritual life, and continue to feed and water you as well. In addition to you watering them. And you do that through encouragement, through, diving into the word together, through praying together. Those are the type of things that I feel helps to tend to my personal soil, as I'm basically getting sunlight, water from others that are also, taking in, their own good soil.
Well, I think that's what farmers do too, and planters, or whatever you call planters. What do you call greenhouse keepers? I don't know what you call it, but I think that's what they do too. They take the soil and they mix it together with fertilizer and everything, and they kind of get the soil to be aerated a little bit more before they stick a plant down in there. I've even heard you can get real good tomato plants if you take a cow pie. You guys know what a cow pie is, right? I mean, I know you're from Indiana and all. And you stick it down there in the bottom before you put the tomato plant down there, and then it gives a lot of nutrition to the plant. That's what I've heard. I don't know how we relate that to anything biblical, but that's what I've heard.
True. That's why farmers spread it on the fields. I don't know if you know that, but
oh no, I do know that. If you go out there and you run the bread route with me, if you happen to have the windows up out there in the country, woo! I hope you don't have your mouth open at the same time.
It's fertilizer. But again, growing up, I always heard you're a product of your environment. So you could be a product of your environment, good or bad. Mm-hmm. And I think, like Pierre said, if you surround yourself with those people, then you become a product of your environment. Now, years and years ago, and I never actually saw the whole movie, but I believe in Schindler's List, there was a quote that said, "Be careful what you pretend to be, because in the end, you are what you pretend to be." And in that movie, I believe it was about a spy, right? Like becoming what the enemy, basically, I think. Now, you could turn that around, because sometimes we don't always have it all figured out. So if you walk the walk, eventually you are talking the talk, right?
Okay.
Like, so we don't all know what we're doing when we first start getting into the word and become new Christians. And we have honestly, at least I can speak for myself. I had no idea what I was doing. I'm just doing the best I could and winging it. And sometimes I still am, to be completely honest with you. And so, but I think it's important, like Pierre said, to surround yourself with those people, because the more you can get their viewpoints and their understanding, it's not my own understanding. I can learn from others. And I think that's why we're meant to be in communion with others, and why we're supposed to have that community.
No, I think so too, because the Bible can get kind of confusing if you're going to go ahead and get in the Word a little bit and start reading it and say, like, okay, that's how I'm going to water and plant here. That's how I'm going to make my soil a little bit better, is by reading the Bible. I mean, it can be confusing. I remember the first time I did that. And you pick up your Bible and you're like, all right, where am I going to start? Well, Old Testament is old, so I don't want to start in the Old Testament. I'm a new guy, so I'm going to start in the New Testament, right? That's what I'm going to do. And so I started in the New Testament, book of Matthew. That's a great place to start. Matthew chapter 1. And I get into all of the genealogy of Jesus. I'm going, what in the world is all this stuff? I couldn't even pronounce the names, right? So I'm just faking it till I make it through that chapter. But that chapter took forever because it was so long and it had so many names and there was nothing to it. And then I get like to the Sermon on the Mount. And Jesus is talking about plucking out your eye and casting it in the fire, and then chopping off your hand, casting it in the fire if it causes you to sin. And I'm going, what in the world is going on in this thing? Because I'd never read the Bible. And I'm like, what in the world? I go out to my uncle, because I lived at his house and he was an elder of the church. And I go, what does he mean? And my uncle explained it to me a little bit. And I just walked away scratching my head going, all right, I need to take a break is what I need to take. So I took a little spiritual break there and tried to digest some of that stuff. Mm-hmm. But I think you got to have people to help you walk you through that journey, because it can maybe get a little confusing and discouraging at times.
Well, in addition, and this will kind of transition us into another parable. So even with the good soil, like weeds are going to find their way in at times.
Oh, yeah.
And so this kind of goes into the parable of the weeds among the wheat, because, Jesus tells them the kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while he was sleeping, the enemy came and sowed weeds among them and went away. And so you have now, your good wheat, and these weeds just start sprouting up amongst the good wheat itself. And that's what negativity does. Like, you think of weeds, you think of negativity and how quickly it can spread, and you can find yourself being negative, based off of someone else, their opinions, their thoughts, their expectations. All of a sudden, you don't even realize it. You're being negative also, maybe towards them, maybe towards others. And you just start to kind of gang up, and that negativity just spreads through. I know I have a work where we have like a chat, and one person can be negative in the chat, and all of a sudden you start to see other moods start to change into a negative type of mindset that were perfectly fine up until that negative person chimed in. So when you come about the weeds and the wheat, I feel like that kind of can play a part in just trying to do your best to surround yourselves with the good soil, with the wheat. But even with that, Jesus speaks to kind of letting that weed kind of remain. And so what are your thoughts? Why do you think Jesus would want the weeds to remain with the wheat?
Is a clear distinction of what's good and what's bad. Mm-hmm. I think that could possibly be one of the reasons why.
I agree. You got any thoughts?
I mean, I think it's because we have our own free will, and we have to choose him. So we have to choose the wheat over, like, basically heaven over hell. Like, if you put it in that kind of analogy, like, if that's not present, then are we really choosing?
That's true. That's true. And in the parable, he kind of answers on whether you want the weeds to be pulled or not. He says, no, because while you are pulling the weeds, you may uproot the wheat with them. Mm-hmm. So with what you're saying, Wes, it's possible as you're trying to clear out what you deem as negative, you're also clearing out some of the positive with that, behavior. You might be pulling up some of the good soil in addition to that. So it's best to just let the good soil, the good wheat remain good, and allow God to be the one to kind of harvest at the end is how I understand it.
Yeah, I agree.
No, and what a farmer's going to do throughout all that
What's
is
that?
he's gonna go looking for the good stuff. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? He's gonna know and be able to differentiate between the good stuff and the bad stuff. And I think that that's what also kind of the parable of the lost coin and the lost sheep.
Mhm.
You have these things and you lose them, and that's where God is. God has people, and at some point maybe people go astray and they get lost. They become weeds and they start sowing the wrong things in life. I know I was guilty of those things. And then the parables say that the owner of the sheep, the owner of the coin, goes out and looks for them, right?
Mhm.
All night long, going out looking for the sheep, all night long, sweeping the house, all night long, looking for the coin. And then when they find it, they rejoice. And they go out telling everybody, look what I found, look what I found. And he's more happy that he found the one rather than having the 99. They're still happy he has the 99, but so happy that he found that one. And if you have a bunch of weeds sitting out in a field and you find one good thing in all those weeds, you're going to be pretty happy that you found that one good thing. God is like that when he looks for us, when he finds us, when we find him. God never really goes anywhere, right? So but when we acknowledge him, he lifts us up. There's rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who turns away from their sins and goes back to him. And I think that that's what it is too. I love that parable. And you guys know I'm selfish because it's kind of talking about me. And it puts me in that spot of where I'm like, man, God was happy. You know, God, when I finally came back to him, when I went ahead and bowed my knee to him,
Mhm.
and I said, yes, I want to follow you. Yes, I accept all of you. Yes, I do. Then he was happy, and that always makes me feel good.
And it should, and it really kind of ties into parables. So you mentioned the lost sheep and the shepherd leaving to find the lost while he had the 99. But you just mentioned, coming back and how happy God was that you returned, which goes into the parable of the prodigal son, in my opinion.
Oh,
Because at least with me, I always seen that story as basically, a dad and two sons. One stayed, did all the good things he's supposed to do, was there with the father, etc. The one got his inheritance, or however you want to call it there, went out, blew it on what, and then kind of stayed away thinking that they wouldn't be accepted, to come back. My father's going to be so angry, so mad, there's no way I can go back. But it got to the point where he was so desperate, that's all he had left. And isn't that what our lives kind of do to us when it comes to us returning to Jesus himself? Like, oftentimes it takes us being so desperate that we have nowhere else to turn for us to, return to God, return to Jesus. And we are those prodigal children. We're that prodigal son who's like, okay, I messed up. Let me go. Let me go apologize. Let me go repent. And as we're going, the father sees us in the distance and he's just so happy, so thrilled. He sends all the servants, all the angels, however you want to put it, to come greet us and welcome us home as if nothing happened, which I think is pretty special.
it is, and I like that. I like that a lot, and because we all have to find that bottom. Hopefully, that bottom isn't as far down as it is for some people. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
I want it to be merciful, but each one of us has our own bottom. I don't want to suggest for anybody to find that bottom, but and hopefully our bottom is something in a very, I don't want to say a deep pool, but a shallow water, because I don't want anybody to go through that kind of pain, being lost and feeling lost. I know that's how I felt whenever I was just out there on my own. Just I felt like a ship just being tossed to and fro in the wind, just out there in the just sailing around with no purpose, with no drive, with no anything. And I'm so glad that I have found something to give me a direction, and that I have allowed there to be a captain in my life to tell me which direction to go.
So true. I mean, I will say, for a lot of my adult life, before Pierre, I literally was looking to things in the world and wondering, like, why am I not good enough? what is it about me? Why does nobody want me? I felt like I had a lot to offer and I just didn't understand why I wasn't good enough. And the answer was because it wasn't time yet. Like I was looking for approval from other things other than God or from other people and feeling like I had to measure up. And that's not the case at all. So I want to encourage people because I think oftentimes we want approval from other people or other things and to feel like we measure up and we're good or keeping up with the Joneses or however you want to put it, or just feeling good enough. And it doesn't matter anyone else's opinion. Only God's opinion matters. And it took me probably 40 years to get to that understanding. So if we can help circumvent that and have somebody really just understand that they matter and that God cares, that's the most important thing I think we could get out of all of this.
No, totally. I love surrounding ourselves as we go back to that question of how do you prepare your own good soil kind of thing? What you surround yourself with, what goes in, what comes is what ends up coming out and everything. And I always try to surround myself. And I think I've said this before, but I'm not positive that I have. I've said it so many times, right? It was a genius thought by myself. I'll be honest with you as I thought about it. So it's a motto of mine. So I don't know if I've said it here or not, but I try to surround myself with 3 different types of people. People that are older than me, right? That got whiter hair than I do. I don't really have white hair, but they're finding their way.
My dad says his is blonde.
Okay. But I try to find somebody who and I hang around people who are older than me because they are so much wiser. And if I have struggles in life and I don't know what to do about them, I know I could ask them about it. And they've been through it before, you know what I mean? And they can maybe give me some wise advice throughout that. And then I'll have somebody to blame in case things go wrong. And the second group of people, that's a joke, by the way, joke. The second group of people is people who are the same age as me so that I can know that I'm not crazy with the struggles that I go through, right? That those people might be struggling with the same things that I am. Like some other people may have a 16-year-old just fresh off of the 16-year-old life, and they could go, "Hey, man, don't do this. I did this, and it was a big mistake," you know. Or people that are approaching that time frame, and I might be able to glean some wisdom from them or something. And the last group are people that are younger than me. I'm talking about kids. I love to surround myself with kids who are younger, who are coming up in the Lord, so I can give, or just, I don't care, even if just neighborhood kids or whatever, just that I can help, just that I can give a good, encouraging word to, because that means so much whenever you're a young person. If somebody can give an encouraging word to you, it sticks with you, right? And you try to teach them how to play basketball, or you teach them how to play baseball or something like that, or even just teach them how to tie their shoe. You know, that's so important to young people that older people take interest in them, but it also keeps me from going off the rails, right? Yeah. Because I have to be good to not let those kids down. Because if I think that they look up to me, not that they do, but if I think that they look up to me, then I have to be better than what I am so that I don't let them down. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think like what you said is basically in a nutshell, you need perspective, and every generation has different perspective, and we all need that. So it's important. If you've never been through something, you can't understand it like someone who has. So I think it's really important to glean perspective from, maybe someone who hasn't been through something yet. Like, when you say the younger generation, like we need their perspective too, because they see things in a completely different way than we do. And the older generation, like you said, has been through the ringer probably here and there and can help us to help guide us get through the things that we're going through.
Yeah, I agree. You kind of lost me on the latter. Like I struggle with kids, and I don't know if it's like a patience thing or not. I know I got to get better, but it's just they're a little wild for me, which is great. They're full of energy. I don't want to steal that energy. I don't want to steal that joy from there, but it's just hard for me to kind of keep up, I guess, when it comes to the mental part of that at times. But you make a good point on how you can kind of be a role model, for them, and it would kind of keep you in line yourself, to just make sure you're not doing anything you shouldn't be, and you're setting a good example for maybe some that don't have that good example at home. So I really,
Well, and there's this there. I got to share two stories with you. That's what parables are, right? Parables are stories, right? So they stick. And so I give people a hard time. I never meet a stranger. And there was this young lady at church. She's probably 16, something like that, 17 years old at the time. I don't know. But it was right around Christmas time, and she was walking through the one area, busy section and everything. But she was walking through, and I noticed the Bible in her hand because I was looking to get a new Bible myself. And I noticed the Bible in her hand. It looked brand new. And I said, "Is that a new Bible?" And we knew who we both were. And she said, "Yes, sir." And I said, "All right, I don't want to see it looking new the next time I see it. Now you got to break that thing in for me. You got to wear that thing out, all right?" And I encouraged her to read the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
A couple years later, I saw her again, and we see each other many times, but I just I don't go in life with a plan. Okay. I am just dumb enough to open up my mouth because I don't understand the severity of the situation most times. And I saw her and I said, "Oh, look at that Bible." I said, "You've been wearing that thing out." And she gave me the blankest stare, right? She just stared at me. And I was like, "Oh man, what did I say wrong?" And she said, "You don't remember, do you?" And I said, "No, I don't remember. I don't know what we're talking about." And she said, "When I first got this Bible, you told me that you wanted me to wear this thing out. And since that day, I have tried to do it so that you would know that I was working on my Bible."
How
and look,
is that?
I never even remembered I said that. I had no idea. But like I said, I just opened up my mouth and things come out. This past Sunday, this kid came home. It was like, kids were out on spring break or whatever. And this kid came home from college. And he said, "Hey, Mr. West, I just want to tell you thank you." I said, "Thank you. What I do?" "You're welcome." "All right. Thank you. What I do?" And he said, "You know what you told me? You told me, you asked me a question one time. You said, 'Do you know why ugly guys have good looking girlfriends?'" I said, I did. This is what I do. Is I open up my mouth without understanding what I'm saying. I said, I did. What was my advice? He said, "You told me it was because they talked to them." And I said, "Well, that's true. They did. That is. Girls like guys who talk to them. And you always see guys out of their league, and they talk to girls who seem to be out of their league, right? So that's what you got to do. You got to talk to them." And I said, "Oh, you got your eyes on somebody, don't you?" And so we got into this conversation, and he sent me a text like the next day. I got to read this because it was so cool. I'm not tooting my horn, y'all. I'm not tooting my horn. Don't take it this way. I am telling you that this brings joy to me, abundant joy that makes me want to do good throughout my lifetime because it made an impact in somebody's life that I didn't even know I impacted. But it was just, I opened up my mouth. I spent a little bit of time. I took some interest in them. I knew what 16-year-old boys talked about. I knew what they thought about. And so I was encouraging that kid not to be shy because he was a shy kid. And I was just encouraging him to go for it, just go for it.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Wes.
No. He said, hey, Mr. West, he sent me a text. I don't even know how he got my phone number, probably because I write it on bathroom walls all over the place. I don't know. That's a joke, too. That's a joke. People are going to use this. Blackmail. Hey, Mr. West, I just wanted you to know and tell you thank you again for investing in me when I was younger and that I haven't forgotten about it. I have a list of people on my door, and he capitalized this, that I cannot let down. And you have been up there ever since I put it up. Hey,
wow.
Y'all. That does my heart so, and I didn't even know, it brings tears to my eyes. I remember that young lady saying that in the foyer about me telling her about her Bible and that she was working. Man, that brought tears to my eyes. I had to give that young lady a hug. Those things are encouraging. And if you're not trying to sow some kind of seed in people's life like that so that you can be encouraged, when you start reaping those kind of rewards and those benefits, oh, y'all, it makes you want to do it again.
It's beautiful. And let that be a lesson that there's extraordinary power in the words that you speak. You never know how what you say, good or bad, can affect another person and how it will affect another person. So those are beautiful. And I think also a testament to how God was working through you, controlling what you say when you say it and things that you don't even think about, right? But he could use it for his good.
Yeah, and keep in mind, there's plenty of horror stories of things I've said that are wrong. Uh, but hopefully they turn out okay because you go back and you apologize or something. You know what I mean? I mean,
Mhm.
you can turn a bad situation into something good because of God's standards that you try to live by.
Well, it's crazy that you said that because I listened. I read this morning. I read like the Glorify app every morning, and it was literally about your tongue and how the words you speak. And so, like talking about this is kind of crazy that was this morning's, but it literally said the best and worst of us is revealed through our speech, and there's a whole bunch more. But like, it's so true. Like what you say matters.
For sure. And I think this is, and Mark, I can't remember what chapter, Wes, you might have to help me out there, but it kind of ties in to the Old Testament where we're kind of looking at like food that's not like clean, like unclean food. And it gets kind of tied into, I'm pretty sure it's Mark. And what Jesus says is that what goes in your mouth is ultimately digested and, comes out.
Mhm.
What comes out of your mouth comes from the heart. That's what your truth is. That's what you're speaking. And so kind of tying into that, that's what's important. It's kind of what comes out. What are you putting out into your generation, into the younger generation, even to the older generation? Sometimes, we can give them hope, of what the
Yeah.
future is going to be like. And so we just got to be really, really, thoughtful when it comes to what we say, especially as Christians, because we can get picked apart. You can find folks that think they're Christians, that say they're Christians, and all of a sudden there's a magnifying glass, on you and what you do, how you behave, because they want to see what it's about. So, you hear about Jesus, people who don't know Jesus, they hear you're a Christian, there's going to be curiosity there, and they're going to watch how you carry yourself, how you behave, how you speak. And speaking life, I think, is the way that you have to go about it. And that's to all generations. You want to speak that positivity and be that good soil, be that wheat.
Yeah, and
No.
again, I'll go back to I think it was James 3 through 12. And the reason I say that is because that also was in my Glorify app this morning. And it literally says, we must recognize the power in our words, but also realize that our words reveal what is in our heart. If you want to know what's in your own heart, listen carefully to what you say. What appears on your tongue tells you what's hidden in your heart. To put it simply, what's formed on the tongue is found in the heart. So like what you said. So I think it was James 3.
Yeah, it's also in Matthew 15, just talking about a man being defiled, but what enters his mouth, what comes out of it. Hey, the whole point of it all, everything, it goes back to the very first parable that we talked about, was sowing the seeds, right, in good soil. And we have to be prepared to have our soil be good as well. And we have to take those preparations to do our soil, right? That's what we got to do. And I think we've come up with some good ideas. And I hope the listeners can help us find some good ideas too by leaving comments on whatever listening platform you like to listen to the show on. This Finding Faith pod is built around you and whatever you want to talk about. We want those kind of conversations to be directly impactful to you. And so if you have any suggestions on what you would like or any topics that you would like for us to discuss, please feel free to get in touch with us at Finding Faith Pod. What's the email address, Pierre? Do you remember?
It's findingfaith.losingsleep@gmail.com.
You are correct, Pierre. That is correct. You get a bonus point for that. I got it right in front of me. I just couldn't say it. It's in blue even, and I couldn't find it. But you can do that. And listen, the whole thing, what we're all trying to do here, Michelle, if I'm not mistaken, is just be encouraging. Trying to season our words with salt, trying to do the right things. And I think that we can all do that a little bit better.
Amen, Wes. If, like we said at the very beginning, if we can touch and reach just one person, that's what matters.
You know what's even more encouraging is that it's never too late. And this isn't a parable, but think about the criminal on the cross. And they both were initially, mocking Jesus is how I read it, at the crucifixion. But one kind of came to his senses a little bit, I feel like. And he's like, hey, I believe you. Is there a place for me? And, Jesus is like, yeah, today you will be in the kingdom of heaven. This is a criminal that's up here on his deathbed, on his death cross, however you want to say it. He probably hadn't went to church. He hasn't been in the Bible. He hasn't been, good soil. But even to his final breath, he had that belief at the end that Jesus was who he said he was, and he got into heaven. And that has to be encouraging. So to listeners, no matter where you're at, how dark a road you've gone down, until your final breath, there's encouragement, that you can meet the Savior, that, your eternal life can be changed for good.
Amen.
Amen to that. Thank you so much for listening. And we hope to get back to you again very, very soon here on the Finding Faith and Losing Sleep podcast.